Well, hello, my beautiful souls. I am actually coming to you in this visual form. So if you see this, I'm going to be putting this up in my on my webpage because I have not added new videos to my webpage recently. So I'm going to be better about that since I'm in quarantine, which I call incubation period. We may talk about that a little bit today, but I'm going to be uploading this in my podcast. So you might be listening to it in one of the platforms as a podcast, and you may be talking to me right now, or I'm talking to you visually. So here's what I want to talk a little bit about. And I waited till the third out of 4 days. So 8, 9, 10, 12 hours in. I've been working in a program called Dare to Lead. If you know Brene Brown, this is a phenomenal book. I've spoken about it before. I've recommended it to some of my clients. And I have the blessing and the honor to have fallen in at the right time. They took me as the 11th person. It should have been a closed program, but I was meant to be there. So I'm very, very excited about that. And something small, but to me huge, was said at almost the end of our 4-hour mark today. So far we've had 12 hours of training towards our certification. And I want to talk about that because there's a piece that I have adopted from Brene Brown. I'm calling this episode Clear is Kind. And it really piggybacks on what we talked about last week with Nancy Levin and her setting boundaries will set you free. Because boundaries is something I'm still working at, better in places than I've been in others. So we're still working at that. And Clear is Kind is one of those, for me, transformative phrases that if I understand correctly, and I do remember, so here it is right in the middle of her book there. I love that she writes really, really big mantras and ideas as she goes through this book. It is a book for leaders, and it is amazing. This is something that I took from her a couple years ago when I read one of her books. I think this is where it was in, but there's also Daring Greatly, which is phenomenal. They all are. And I had heard it at some point because it seemed it's so familiar. And then I finally heard her speak about, I had heard it in an Al-Anon meeting. And she mentions that she pulled that from one of her meetings that she had been in. I think hers was AA. For me, it was Al-Anon. And it makes so much sense. It seems like such a simple thing, but it takes a little bit of work and digging to figure out how to do that. And if you're working on boundaries right now, then this is a it's more than a mantra. This is a slogan. I guess it could be a slogan, but this is your battle cry in a good way. Not battle like you're fighting, but clear is kind. And I will tell you that I had it backwards for a very long time. I was fearful of hurting others. I was fearful of being uncomfortable in situations. And so I would either stay silent, I would stifle my voice, I would not say my true opinions. And then I'm going to be totally honest, I would complain and talk about someone after the meeting. Like, you ever have a meeting after the meeting? I've been in meetings where there was a meeting before the meeting. And I know if you've ever been in that situation, you walk into a room and you're like, what's going on here? I think that there was all a discussion before I ever walked in. So I've been in the place where I've come in as a second meeting to the meeting. And I've also had meetings outside the meeting, meaning I didn't speak my mind. I was upset in the meeting. And then I either badmouthed or gossiped, or, I'm going to be totally real here and raw. I definitely was not a saint. And it was all because I didn't know how to be clear. And the clear is kind. When you set limits, when you set boundaries, when you tell the other person what you are expecting, what you'll accept and not accept, there'll be less cleanup afterwards because you were clear about those boundaries. So I'm combining Nancy Levin and Brene Brown right now, that no one can step over a boundary that you've set. That's your choice what you're going to do with that. I'm giving you power back. I've taken my power back, and I want you to take yours back. And this is the part that I'm going to share. I'll share it right here in the very beginning. I'm going through it. So those of you who are listening, I'm going through my notebooks right now. And it was spoken at the very, very end, not even in one of our exercises, by one of our facilitators. And I was like, oh, I grabbed my pen and wrote feverishly. And I know I wasn't the only one, because someone asked shortly after, can you repeat that? Because I want to get it down right. And it's the difference between kindness and niceness, or being kind and being nice. I actually never thought that there was a difference. And until this particular day and the workshop that I went through, I never thought about there being a difference. So here's the definition. You ready? Kindness is saying difficult things with grace and honor. Feels good, doesn't it? I'll say that again. Kindness, saying difficult things with grace and honor. You can see there's my little notes. I took notes on my iPad. I took notes on the paper. I'm taking notes everywhere. Nice is protecting people's feelings. And that, although that sounds like a good thing, I want you to listen for a second here. This is avoiding feeling uncomfortable ourselves many times, or trying to avoid having someone else feel uncomfortable. Going to be nice. Let that sink in for a second, right? Kind and nice. I always saw them as being synonyms as a language teacher, also as being synonymous. They're not. So nice is the avoidance. It's not wanting to deal with the discomfort. It's not wanting to go into that place where there's an uncomfortable feeling. Sorry, as I'm sitting here, my family, we're in quarantine, so everybody's like going everywhere. I'm hearing doors. It kind of shook me for a second. But kind is saying the hard things, saying the difficult, going to that place, but doing it with grace and honor. Wow. I said today, as we closed up, they let a couple people, if you wanted to, talk about something that hit you, or that with, an aha moment, and all the beautiful work that we did. This is my aha moment, because I'm really going to start looking at my life where I've been kind, where I've been nice, where I really wanted to be kind. Where was I avoiding the difficult conversation in order to be what I thought was kind, but it wasn't. It was kind of, shall I say, cowardly? I'm not putting myself down. I needed to be at a place where I had more strength, but it definitely, the nice part is somewhat less courageous, actually a lot less courageous, let's be totally honest here, than the kind part. And from now on, if I ask myself, what do I want to be known as, kind or nice? I want to be known as kind. I want to be known as the person that someone can trust and come to and be willing to support them, given that they give me permission. Even with my clients or friends, mostly my clients, I'll say, if it's a sticky situation, are you giving me permission? Are you asking me? Are you giving me permission to answer that? Because we all know sometimes we just need to be heard, right? We don't necessarily nothing needs to get fixed. Nothing needs, sometimes we don't need or want for someone to come back and give us the answers. We just want space to be held. And that's something else that we talked about today, is the other piece that I want to talk about, the clear is kind. A big thing that came up for me anyway, as we were talking, was about defensiveness. I'm looking at my iPad right now, so those of you who are listening, because there was some major major pieces of recognizing defensiveness. And honestly, I didn't even know that I would go into a defensive mode. Um, I thought that's how everybody responded inside, let's say that internally. And I always say, you don't know what you don't know until you know more. I didn't know that not everyone felt that way. So one of the questions, because you need to know when you're defensive, so you know what that feels like, to also be able to step into a place of being kind and speaking with grace and honor the difficult things. And so when we started to look a little bit about places that we were defensive or have been, maybe not now, and what that looked like for us, they asked the question and they had us go in, like go for the physiological responses. And I'm like, I don't know. What does it feel like? And that's what they were asking us. So when I really sat down and thought about it, I had a variety of things that would come up. And one of them was that I'd get confused. And I don't know that I would have ever recognized it if they didn't ask. So I'm asking you now, what does it look like for you to get defensive? For me, example, I'll show you. Show you, those of you I'm looking at right now. I wrote down, here's some of the things that would come up for me. I'd get a dry mouth. I'd get hot and sweaty sometimes. Other times I'd get very cold. Like I feel like I lost all the blood and I got really, really cold. And the other thing that definitely embarrassed would come, but I also would feel confused. And I had to think about this. It's happened numerous times in meetings at school or not so much my coaching. My coaching, I'm more one-on-one or in a group. And for some reason, I think because I've started coaching later, I've had more experience of my defensiveness and my judgment and all those things in a school setting where the coaching has been the last 4 or 5 years. So I'm in a different place as a coach now, as my own personal self, than I was in school. So when I looked back, I realized when I feel defensive, when I feel I'm being judged, I get confused. Here's why: because I shut down. I shut myself down. I close in the walls. So then suddenly it feels like no matter what people are saying, it's either Charlie Brown, remember the teacher in Charlie Brown, where you hear the want, 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 or like you had sentences and you dropped out words and you pushed the sentence back together and everything seemed hard and distant, almost like in an echo chamber type of way. So I say that and I explain my response so that you can start paying attention to places where you may feel defensive in a relationship, in a conversation. And that's really, really important to know how that feels on your end, how to read the signs that it's showing up so that you can step in and lean in, because people need you. People need me. People need us to be more kind and less nice. And the nice is the part that we hide. It's when we stick our heads in the sand. It's when we're fearful of someone's reaction, whether we'll be judged, what are they going to think of me, versus the kind. That was what was so huge to me. I'm pulling out my notebook again to look, which was doing it with grace and honor. And I will tell you, if you start to adopt clear is kind, that was such a game changer for me. And it is for many of my clients. I was honest that this is when it came up for me. I'm not trying to say I'm 10 years ahead of you. I'm right there. I'm walking the talk. I'm discovering daily. But I thought it was nicer, which it was, to not tell someone that something was bothering me, or I didn't like how this was going, or whatever it might be, the feedback, which tied directly into my lack of boundaries and not being present in what I truly believed. We were asked to pick like the two biggest qualities that we would, out of a list. Let me tell you, it was hard. Lists and lists and lists. I can share some of those words with you. Maybe I can. Maybe I can pull them right up off my iPad right now. Where we went through and it was our homework from the week before. List of values, that's what it was. So they wanted, and if any of you have read Dare to Lead, then you know what I'm talking about. She talks about her two core values that carry her through everything. And so we were asked to go through this list. Those of you who are on screen with me, can you see how many words there are? I mean, and then all my highlighter's even pink, that I would highlight so many things. Words like, so those of you who are listening, words like accountability, adaptability, authenticity, balance. These are some of the words I picked. Belonging, caring, collaboration, commitment, humility, integrity. Good words, right? Diversity, dignity, curiosity, self-respect, fairness, faith, openness, understanding. I mean, there's so many great values. And the idea that we had to come up with two was like, what? How? And let me tell you, as we would go off into these small groups and converge and as a collective talk, it was amazing. I told my group this, to listen to the other, in my group, there's a group of just three of us, so two other women. And they had such great words. And right away, I heard their words and I wanted to be like, oh, but they're so much better than mine. I love your words. But their words, which are not just words, their values, fit them and where they were at in their life perfectly. And so it was amazing to say, wow, my words hit me, my values hit me, your values perfectly are for you, and your values are for you, which tells me and reminds me that we are all equally as right. We can be different in our sameness is in that difference, that there's no less than or more, because you have two different values that you put first over my two values. And so that was an amazing thing to listen to. And the clear is kind. They were very clear about what their values meant to them. And I'll tell you, my two that I came down with was one, authenticity, and two, wholeheartedness. And the authenticity was probably because I spent so many years not being authentic to myself, not actually knowing. I give myself complete grace on this, not actually knowing how to be authentic. I think the very first podcast that I've created for you was about, the name of this is Living Your Life in Authentic Splendor. My trademark, I mean, literally trademark through the government, is authentic splendor. Living your life in this high vibe, happy, exciting place when you're authentic and not fearing it. That's what it means to me, not fearing it. And being authentic is not faking it till you make it anymore. My house is so loud right now. Wait, you might see it. Somebody's going to open the door and say goodbye. Yep. Bye, hon. Love you too. So here's real life in your podcast today. That's my 20-year-old. He's on the front line working in the grocery store. So our very first podcast was on authenticity. And so it's not a surprise to me that as I went through the words, authenticity would be my first value. And then follow it with wholeheartedness. And wholeheartedness is leading from the heart with the intention of always supporting with love. That does not mean we don't say the hard stuff. That does not mean we don't hold people accountable. That does not mean we won't rumble, as Brene says. But it means that if we are authentic to our feelings, we have to honor them, and goes back to clear is kind. I can't be authentic if I'm not willing to tell you what is truly bothering me. I need to know why it's bothering me. I need to do that work first. And even though I might figure out the reason, it doesn't mean that I don't bring it to your attention. It doesn't mean that I just brush it under the rug. That's what the clear is kind is. And Being authentic means knowing what is coming up for me and living in my truth, even if it's not someone else's truth. So that, whatever your value might be, whatever you would choose, being authentic means living in your truth. And it's okay. It's more than okay. If that's not someone else's truth, it's your truth. And it still is that valid. It doesn't matter if they have a different opinion, or if they think it differently, or if they do something differently, or the story that they've lived their life that they bring to the table has a completely different look to it. That's their truth. And their truth and your truth are equally as true. And that's the piece that when we step into, that we are not less than nor better than someone else's truth. Just like when I got to work in that group and listen to those other two phenomenal ladies' two core values. Now, I will tell you, I kind of cheated. We're supposed to have two. We could push to three. I went for five. This is how I see it. The sandwich is the two bread, gluten-free bread on both ends. And that's my authenticity and wholeheartedness. And then what keeps it together, the meat of it, or maybe avocado or mushroom in the middle, is grace, faith, and gratitude. Those are the parts that hold me together. So I cheated a little. I set it up that way, but hey, I like to make my own rules now. But that's where I want to circle back again to finish up here, is that clear is kind, and the difference between kindness and niceness. Niceness, that's a word. Nice and kind. Kind is willing to talk about the difficult things with grace and honor. And to me, that would be coming from a wholehearted place. That would be coming from a place of love, kind of like, I'm going to date myself, but Care Bears. Remember the Care Bears? And each one would have a different symbol on their chest, whether it was a rainbow or heart. I'm trying to remember what the other ones were. There's a couple. I mean, there's quite a few of them. But I pictured it as like literally coming out, the energy coming out from the heart. And that does not meaning, I can say that right, it does not mean that we are just being nice. Nice is just covering up. It's like spray painting gold on some poop. It's like, well, it looks pretty. It's nice. Versus being kind. Speaking the difficult talk, leaning in with honor and grace. So I'm going to leave you with that today. I'm looking at my time. We are 23 minutes, so that's not bad. I definitely wanted to make that short again. We had the beautiful, if you have not caught that conversation with Nancy, you definitely want to catch that. It's life-changing. It is, especially if you have any issues with boundaries. If you think you don't have issues with boundaries, go listen to the podcast or find this on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, because she's fantastic. And this is a perfect one to follow up with from Brene, clear is kind, and the difference between kind and nice. I'm going to be going for kind. I hope you join me. All right. Have a great week. Enjoy, and I will be checking in with you. It's my promise. I've been doing back on track with a podcast a week. Have a great day.